I want you to relax and have some fun with the intro. There are a couple things that you need to keep in mind for grading purposes. So as I've suggested before, constantly be going back to the project page. Use this as a checklist to make sure you do everything. For what we are about to do, this would be the most important section, is just making sure that you keep your timing on track. But I'll show you how to do that right now. We're about to make a major change on this project, so good time to save, good time to do another backup. Let's see, what am I up to here? Like 8 backup copies, so I'll make my 9th backup copy, save, close that down, go back to my properly named one that I've been continuing on. There are two different ways that we can make room at the front of our animation. The first one I'm going to show you, I'll call it a full selection and a drag. So the idea is that we want to get a hold of everything in our animation. To do that, we click on the very first frame, the top left frame, then we go and we click on the top, or I should say the bottom right frame. So in our case, that was very easy to do because we only had 2 frames worth of information and they aligned up perfectly. Then the next step would be to just click and drag. You can see right now I just dragged like a little over 1 second, but you'd keep doing that until these ended up at the 12-second mark. I'm going to Command Z that, and now I'm going to show you the other way that's a little more, I guess, accurate, especially if you have layers all over the place. For that, you're simply going to do something that you're already pretty familiar with, and that is you're just going to push this out by clicking and dragging down to make a selection, and then using your F key to insert. I'm just going to insert 1 second here to start with. Then I'm going to take these 2 frames, a click, a shift click to select both of them, a click and a drag to move them out. So right now what we've done is added 1 second at the start of our animation. Now all we have to do is put our cursor across both of these frames, in other words a click and a drag across both layers, hold down the F5 key, keep our eye on these 2 frames, and when they get to the 12-second mark, we can stop. Now, I know I did mention that it's between 8 and 12 seconds, but why not go for 12 seconds? If you find you don't have enough stuff to do to keep you busy for 12 full seconds, you can always use a Shift F5 with a selection to reduce the amount of layers you have there. So I just have to keep scrolling because I have a small computer screen set up for demo purposes, but eventually I will make it to that 12-second mark. And remember, this animation at the beginning will include whatever you creatively come up with, but the very last thing, you want to save at least a second, maybe 2, for a fade in, I should say a fade out, so that your animation intro concludes, fades out, and then all of a sudden we have this, and we get started with what we've already seen. A few videos ago, I showed you this demo example intro that I came up with, and I'm going to go through and show you how I did most of this. I'm also going to show you some extra techniques to hopefully motivate you. I'm going to play this one more time, and I want you to notice, of everything that you learned, see what 3 techniques I used in here. So the scale change was pretty obvious. The ones that weren't so obvious would maybe be the alpha, the fade in there. But the scale change, most of this involves scale change, and then there's one quick rotation there. I'm going to start animating, and I'm going to make some mistakes on purpose, kind of give you fair warning so that you don't do them, show you how to correct them. So the first thing I want to show you with the mistake is why we should avoid working on these layers right here. You might think, hey, we got these layers, we got all this free space, why not work on them? And you certainly could, but you would just have to be really careful. And so let me show you why I don't recommend it. On the first layer, I'm going to go ahead and animate classic. Grab a hold of this with the free transform tool, click on the edge, hold down the shift key, and make it quite a bit bigger. And actually, you're going to get to watch me make two mistakes. Double click on the hand tool so I can fit this in there. And let's say that I wanted this to go from off stage to over here 2 seconds later. Do my F6. Hopefully you're not copying along because I am clearly making some mistakes here. So I have this here. I have it here. Move this over here to here. Right click and do my classic tween. Now, sometimes it gives you this warning, which is great. So I highly suggest you don't click this button, don't show again. But sometimes I've never checked this button, and sometimes I don't get the warning. So I'm not sure what the logic is behind that, but hopefully that was enough of a hint to let you know what I did wrong here. So when I clicked OK, it did go ahead and give me the result I was after. I just didn't get it as efficiently as it should be. I ended up with bogus stuff in my library. Before I show you how to fix that problem, let's amplify the other problem we were talking about. Let's say, for example, I'm working on here and I realize that happened a little faster than I wanted. So I put my cursor in there and I do an F5, extending that. Well, here's the problem. Not only was I extending that, I just moved my two layers out of sync with each other over here. So you see how I can animate the X position comes in. We don't even see the symbol yet. So that is why you don't want to work on these layers. I'm going to show you how to fix all of these problems without doing, for example, a file revert and going back to our last saved version, or doing a whole bunch of Command Z's. So by not making our text, the word classic, into a symbol, we ended up with two tweens in our library. And you can't simply fix that just by deleting one of these, because then what happens is your tween gets broken. So about the best thing you could do if you didn't want to go back too far is you could just rename this one, and then you could copy an instance out here, for example, with an F6, then move it, and you would have resolved the problem. However, we also have this on the wrong layer. If we truly wanted this, we could copy these frames. In fact, let's do that. Let's go from here to here. Now here's something that may be new for you. If I right click in between here and I select copy frames, it selects all of this data. So this is very different than just doing a copy. So you can't use the keyboard shortcut Command C for this because it is very different. We're going to make a new layer by clicking here. We will go to where we want this, in this case our first frame. Then we will right click and we will select paste frames. So now we have the same exact thing that was there. Now I'm not sure why we got this tween that goes all the way out after that, but we can certainly easily enough get rid of that. We'll just right click in here and we'll select remove classic tween, and so now we should have what we were thinking, where that moves into place. Now we can go about restoring this area here. So if we just click from here to here, and let's try control, and let's see if clear will work. If it doesn't, we'll try something else. Clear frames. Okay, so that sort of worked. If we turn off the eyeball, we can see that work, but I'll bet you that our animations are still out of sync, and they are. So maybe cutting the frames would have worked better, maybe shift F5, but not a big deal. I can also put my cursor in here, hold down the shift key, and then keep clicking F5 until I get my animations back into sync with each other. And now everything looks good there. Let me double click on the hand tool so we can see everything that's happening here. Yeah. When I turn the eyeball back on, or turn the layer back on by clicking on the eyeball, we can see that we get what we want. The only thing that may not be exactly, well, it's definitely not exactly what we want, is that once this animation starts, our items still keep up inside of here. Or by items, I just mean the word classic. That's super easy to fix, and we don't really have to worry about it right now, but if it was bothering us, we would just simply click in here, do an F7. F7 gives you a blank keyframe, which means nothing else exists on that top layer from here. It's a very good idea to name our layers. I just cleared this layer out so there's nothing on it, so we're probably all kind of back to normal here. So if you're starting to work on this, this is something that you may want to do. In fact, I'm going to rename this layer temp end. And the idea here is I want to give myself an ending spot for my animation. We talked several times about how it's better to work in reverse in a lot of cases with animation. So let's just give ourselves a frame that we can turn off and on, and we'll just make a nice clean version of where we expect our animation to look like, or what we expect our animation to look like right before it fades out and fades into the body of the animation. So clicking on that first frame there, I will just type out and make this look as much like what I remember my final product to be. In fact, I'm not going to overly worry about how much it looks like the demo, because the main thing here is just to teach you how to do some things. I know that tweening was a little bit smaller. Okay, so that just helps give me a goal in mind. So I'm going to copy this layer by right-clicking on it and selecting duplicate. And then I will name this one classic. I'm just doing a shortcut right now. I could have just redone the whole classic. But on this layer, I don't need the word tweening. And to make sure I'm deleting from the proper layer, I am going to go back here, and on the temp end, I'm going to lock that layer. On the text and main symbol, I'm going to lock, and accidentally here I hit the eyeball. So I want temp end locked, the text locked, and the main symbol all locked. And then classic layer, I want to delete the word tweening. And now I'm going to start animating the word classic here. Now, why did it not look like tweening went away? Because it lives on this layer here. So if I toggle this eyeball off and on, which we'll do several times, that'll be clearer. So special considerations that we've learned about animating text. First is, if you're going to do a classic tween with it, you need to make it a symbol. And it looks like I might have some old stuff in my library here, so I'll just delete that. So if I'm going to need the word classic all by itself completed, I need to turn it into a symbol. So here it is right now, just a static text. How do I know that? Because if I select it and I go into properties, it tells me that that is indeed what it is. So assuming that I'm going to need this down the road in its entirety, I'm going to hit an F8 and I am going to name that classic. Now, if I want to animate just the C, let's say I'm going to make the C get really big and then go back in size. How do I do that? I have to have each one of these letters broken apart from each other, or at least broken apart from the C, so that I can do the C. But as you saw in my demo, I actually start animating a lot of these letters. So let's get these letters to become their own symbols in the library. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this. I'm going to go up to modify and I'm going to click break apart. Now what that did was it took the symbol that was on the stage and let's see what it actually is now. Yeah, it broke it apart, so it's actually static text on the stage. The classic itself as a symbol still lives in the library and I could bring a copy out if I wanted to. Don't need it now, so Command Z. Now I select this static text, go to modify, break apart again, and now if I click away and click on just one of these letters, you can see that I have them separated now. So I'm going to Command Z that a couple times to get back to where I was. And now what I need to do is make each one of these their own symbol. To make each one of these its own symbol, we just simply click on it, hit F8, and let's give some intelligent names to these so that they're easy to find later on. So I'll go C upper for the uppercase C, then maybe I'll click on this C, F8, and since that's the only one that was capitalized, I guess I can just call this one C. When we get to the S's, though, we need a S1 and an S2. Other than that, pretty straightforward. So you don't need me to watch, or you don't need to watch me name every single one of these. So we'll pick up in the next video where we have a library full of these named, or you can just watch along since how you do this part is optional.